Hi, everyone. Welcome to your Learning Library Online. My name is Gail, and today we're going to be exploring the database CINAHL. Let me share my screen with you. So what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at the Learning Library homepage for the Canadore side of the world. And this is what it looks like. If you haven't been here before, you can get here from Canadore's homepage. Simply go under the support tab at the top and you'll see a link for the Harris Learning Library. You can also search for us online, or there is our URL if you need to get to us. Most of the time you would come in here and you would be searching in this Omni search box for any books, articles, or videos. But because we are specifically looking for a database, the best way to go about that is select the tab for resources. And then what you're going to do is explore resources link. Okay. Now, this is the page for the A to Z database listing. And what we're seeing now is 326 different databases that both Canadore and Nipissing have paid to have subscriptions for. So if you're a Canadore student, you would use the Canadore ones. Nipissing student, you'd use Nipissing. Same thing, faculty, staff as well. And then there's also open access material, so you can go in there and use those anytime. They're open to everyone. One way to narrow down the search right off the beginning is maybe you want to go in. These are all the different subjects being studied at Canadore and Nipissing, including those multidisciplinary databases that cover a lot of subjects, but you might want to look specifically at health sciences. The other thing you can do is simply go under the alphabetical listing for C, because we are looking for CINAHL. And in this case, you can see Nipissing is paid for one subscription and Canadore is paid for another subscription to the same database. You will need to log in, so you'll want to go in through the one that's makes sense for you. For you, it's probably Canadore. I'm linked under the Nipissing one, so I'm just going to hop in here. It would act in the same way. At that point, you are going to be asked to log in, and it's going to be the same username and password for your Canadore email account. So if you don't know that, you will check with your IT folks, and you should get to this page. So this is what any of the databases that are provided by this vendor called EBSCO, they've laid it out in this advanced search page. And they've done it in this fashion to help you with any evidence-based research type inquiries that you're making. So you can see, we can put in a certain keyword here. We can then use what's referred to as Boolean operators, and that's a research term. And what that helps is if you use the word and added another keyword here, it will narrow down your search. So it will look for both of those keywords in one research article or video or whatever the information source you're looking for. And so the other Boolean operators are or. You would use that in terms of if you wanted to add more or get more results on a topic. And I'll show you an example of that in a few minutes. And then finally, not is kind of self-explanatory. That's the times when you maybe want to make sure that a certain term is not being used. Maybe you're doing a topic about dogs and you don't want to see any results from prairie dogs, for example. You could use that filter and say dogs in the top box, and then you'd say not, and then say prairie dogs in the second one. So it just helps the technology understand what you're looking for in the best way, okay? The other thing I do want to mention to you right at the beginning is this My EBSCO option on the side. A lot of times if you're doing evidence-based research classes, this is really a helpful tool for you to use. If we select for that right now, you can see I am logged in. If I wasn't logged in, I could either log in, or if I've never been here before and I need to set up an account, it will give me a create an account option. And that's what you're going to do. And you would use your own email and password, whatever you prefer. It doesn't have to be your school one, but it can be if you prefer. But select for that. And then later on, I'm going to show you how this can be really helpful to you in managing all your information that you find. Okay. So let's go in and select for a topic. You're going to have done some of this work ahead of time. No matter what the topic is, think about the keywords you're searching for. And I'm going to select the term arthritis. I'm somebody who is afflicted with arthritis. I was diagnosed when I was 11 years old. And I thought I would use that as an example today. So arthritis, and you can see it actually starts with this drop-down menu and gives you some other maybe keyword or key terms that you may not have thought of for yourself. So for example, it's going to look for, in this case, arthritis or osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis. So that's where those Boolean operators are coming into play already, okay? So that's going to look for all three of them. Just because it comes in this drop-down menu, that doesn't mean that those are the accurate words you should be using, or those are the perfect words, or those are even words that match your topic. Maybe some of these don't fit what you need. It just simply means someone has conducted a search using those terms in the past, okay? But sometimes, as in this case, maybe it's going to be helpful to me. So I'm going to do a search, and I'm going to see what it comes up with. Now, you can see that it's come back with 131,000 plus results. But if I go through this list, that's a lot of things to look through, right? And when I look at it, I can see it's all sorts of different topics that's being covered, you know, heat shock, performance outcomes, arthritic complaints. So maybe I want to look at something like treatments for arthritis. None of those work for what I'm looking for, right? So what I can do then is I can go back to that advanced search page and I can add in some more keywords. And if you're using something like an evidence-based research framework, something like PICO or PO or Spider, this is where those facets that you've created already before you even came to the database is going to be beneficial to you. So when I was younger, when my joints used to hurt, sometimes they do something called ice therapy. So they have me use ice packs or even sometimes just a bag of frozen peas to put on my joint to help calm down the inflammation and the pain. So you can see now ice therapy or ice or cold therapy. But what I've done now is I've set this up so that I'm looking at arthritis and the terms ice therapy. Okay. The other thing that I can do, this is the really powerful part of using EBSCO databases, is I can go down here and I can limit my results for things like peer-reviewed. Maybe your professor has actually asked you to only use peer-reviewed journals. I could select this box and now I know that all of the results I'm going to get are coming from peer-reviewed journals, okay? I personally only speak English, so maybe I want to select English language as one of my options, right? I can also see, you know, maybe I need to select for human. When I show you some results in a little bit, we'll see that some of the results will come up with maybe results for non-human subjects. So maybe that's important to you. Maybe it's something your professor wants you to have authors that are nurses. Maybe that's good. The other thing that often happens is the publication date. And the reason your professors often want you using information within the last 12 months or the 5 years or 10 years or another date range is that they want you to have current and up-to-date information. The treatment I received when I was a kid, very, very different now that I'm, you know, over 50 years old. So that's why, especially in the healthcare field, this can be very, very important to you. Okay. I'm going to select just for the last 10 years just to make it a little bit easier for me. Okay. So I'm going to conduct my search and I'm going to come up back with a bunch of results. So 74 results this time. That's much more reasonable, right? And when I go through and I can look through each of these results and I can tell even from the title whether or not it kind of fits my topic. And I do want you to think about that. You know, if your professor said, I want you to have 4 or 10 results, you're not going to pick the top 4 or the top 10. You are going to have to go through and do that evaluation, see if it meets your actual information inquiry or question that you have. Okay. Now, If I look at this, I can see once again, here's where I was mentioning about we could have selected for humans because there's one for dogs with arthritis, right? Here's one where it's using clinical like cryotherapy in acute arthritis. Cryotherapy was a new term for me. That wasn't something I had thought about until I started doing research in this topic. And I'll show you a little bit more about that term in a minute. And once again, there's mice. So if I had selected for humans, these two particular articles wouldn't have shown up, okay? But let's go down and see, perhaps this article in particular is of interest to me. Maybe cold mist shower is something I'm interested in or intrigued by. I hadn't heard about that before. This will give us some information right from the front page. So this is the author's names. This is where it's being published. So that's the journal it's from, the Scandinavian Journal of Rheumatology. This is the date. So that falls within my last 10 years, right? Objectives of what they're trying to prove with their research, and then some subjects. And if we open this up, if this does seem to still fit my interest or my need, open this up, and this is just showing us the record once again, the title, the author's names. It also shows the affiliation where they work. So that tells you what their credentials are like. Are they working in this field? Are they experts in this area? Those are good things to know about, right? Major subjects, that's the major topics or the major key points that they're talking about or looking into in this particular study. Okay, minor subjects, same thing. Abstract, that's the description of what's covered in this article. And it's a great way for you to save time as students. Read this over. Make sure it meets the needs that you have for your particular topic. Okay. This is a great way to decide, if this is not really what I thought it was about based on the title, I can move on to the next article. But if it is one that I want to use, you'll see there's no actual article shown on this page. What I need to do now is go to the access options. And hopefully I'm going to see a PDF or I'm going to see online full text. I always have to find the full text of this article, okay? If those aren't there, I would select for the get it option, and the equipment is going to go out, the tool is going to go out and look at all the databases we have and see where you might have access, okay? So at this point, I would select the PDF. I want to see the article because you do need to use this. You need the full article to be able to use it as your information source. Make sure you can get to this. Your faculty members will come to us with your citation lists at times and ask us to see if we can actually get to the full text. They will check. They will go back and make sure they can find it for a lot of your assignments. So just be aware that can happen. Now, an academic level peer-reviewed article is going to be more than one page for sure. It's going to be several pages because what it's going to do is have a discussion about the methodology, perhaps the results, the discussion. They might show you some graphs like this, some statistics, but they'll always explain what it is they're showing and where it's come from, where they've derived this information. And lastly, at the end, there will always be a list of references, okay? I do want you to know this because often students will get caught if they find things that are only one page long, maybe a book review about a certain topic or something like that. And if their faculty member can't get back to it and get to this full text, they are potentially going to ask you about where you got your information, how you did this, thinking about citations or the inaccurate use of AI tools, things like that, okay? If you do find that this is a good article for you, you may want to save this and put it into one of your projects, and I'll show you that in a minute. But the one thing I do want to mention is there is this little button, my handprint is showing over it, but this is a cite button. And if we select this, it will actually create the citation for you for this article, okay? Make sure you're choosing the right style or format guide that you're using. I think you'll probably in healthcare be using APA style, but make sure you check that against your assignment, okay? And then you're always going to check this against your guide or against the guidance that your professors have provided to you in terms of what they would like to see for your citation work, okay? But this is a great place to start. You can cut and paste this and then make sure all those details are there that you need in particular. And if, for example, you got to a point where you couldn't find the full text of the article, You can always send this citation to our library staff, and we will help you see if we actually have access to it somewhere in all of our different subscription or open access databases. Okay, we're here to help with that for sure. But make sure you do that ahead of time before you're trying to write your assignment, right? That's really imperative that you do those pieces. Now, I did mention to you, there's a couple of other tools. Let's go back out here. We're going to go do a new search. So we're back to that front page. And this time, instead of using the searching Boolean search operators, I want to show you this little tool down here. This is called CINAHL headings. And this is often going to help you with things like keyword searching. So you remember we used the term ice therapy because as a general person or a patient even, that's the terminology I knew to use when I was doing the search. But if I go down and look at this, we can see that ice pack therapy, which is what I'm interested, or ice therapy, you use this term cryotherapy. So let's go and see what this is about. And what this will do is provide you with this. This is the CINAHL headings are sort of like if you've had an opportunity to look at Medline or PubMed even, the mesh subject headings that they use, the medical subject headings, these are selected terminology. So it's specific keywords that will work. It's from a controlled vocabulary in terms of healthcare field, what's being used in the field for this particular term. Okay, so cryotherapy, it says a local or topical application of cold for therapeutic purposes. It's exactly what I was thinking of, right? Used for, and all these different terms actually fall under the term cryotherapy. Always use that in your search, okay? And then if we go down, you can actually see there's a little bit more information. So there's something called a tree. And the tree view actually just allows us to see where cryotherapy falls into the research or the subject in general, right? So in this case, therapeutics is our top term. And then as we go down, you can see all these different types of therapies. And if we keep going, there's cryotherapy as one of our options, okay? Now, if I go back up, because there's these little boxes, you can actually see I want it to be a major concept because it's one of my key phrases, maybe in my PICO framework that I've created. And if I select for that, it will be used as a main subject heading. But also there's all these other subheadings that may be of use to me, depending how your assignment is laid out or how you have designed your search topic, okay? So maybe you're looking at it from a history perspective. You know, how has it worked over time? Maybe you want to look at something where there's statistics involved. That might be an option for you. So there's all sorts of ways to do this and conduct your search, right? Right now, what I'm going to do, I've selected for cryotherapy and right here, and you see I'm going to go up now and I'm going to add that to my search. So if I go up to the top again, I can see now it's at cryotherapy, and if I add in my other term again, arthritis, or we'll have those other two types of arthritis as well, we can see what happens with our search. Now we're down to 47 results, but it's much closer in to what type of information I need, okay? Now, the other tool I did mention to you was, you know, having that term projects. I used that a while ago. Maybe this is an article when I go in it, I find it interesting. I can select for that, and then I can add that to my projects. So here's my project list. Okay, so I'll add it to my projects. I have a few that I've already set up in my EBSCO account. So here's my option for cryotherapy, and I can add that in now. Okay, another thing I can do is simply go through and maybe this article that I looked at earlier, maybe I want to put that as one of my my saved articles. So I'm just going to save it. And what that means is now over here on the side, I can look at my projects list. So I have several different projects. Maybe I have different papers that I'm working on. I can set up a project for each one, and then I could go in and look at it. Maybe I'm looking at something like, maybe I'm doing a dental hygiene class, and that's what I want to look for. I could go in and look under this project and see what records I have there, right? So those are really good ways to help you keep control or organized in doing all of your assignments. I can also see my saved list. And finally, the one that your professors sometimes used often in their assignments is recent activity. So if I use this recent activity, I can go in and I can see these are the different searches I've conducted since I was logged in this particular option for my EBSCO. When I logged in now, these are the results I found. And this is where you can save this. You can download your results. Um, Once you have this in here, you can also combine these results. Maybe you want to look at this cold therapy and you want to look at cryotherapy, and you can combine it with and see what results you come up with. But there's lots of different ways you can use this tool, okay? And this is where you can then download the list, and that's what you can hand in sometimes with your assignment if your professors want you to look at your search history or want to look at your viewed records, okay? So those are great aspects of this particular database. EBSCO provides a lot of these within their databases, but CINAHL in particular is very focused towards healthcare, so it might be really useful to you. So I hope that helps you out. If you do have questions about navigating this or maybe finding the right keywords or things like that, you can always touch base with your faculty member, obviously, but also the library staff are here to help out. Make sure to conduct your searches and your research ahead of time. You don't want to be left to the last minute. This does take time. So, give yourself that grace to have the time later on to do the work in a good way. And hopefully those tips will help you out. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you soon.